The hallway smelled like sweat and old carpet. Fluorescent lights buzzed overhead, casting everything in a flat, tired glow. Outside, the crowd was still roaring, their voices blending into a single low hum that pressed against the walls. Inside, it was quiet, too quiet. The kind of quiet that makes your chest tight. Jackson Browne stood near the door, hands in his pockets, staring at the floor. His hair was damp, shirt wrinkled. He'd just come off stage. The applause was still ringing in his ears, but it felt distant now, like it belonged to someone else. He wasn't thinking about the crowd, he was thinking about the door at the end of the hall. Behind it was Don Henley. They hadn't spoken in years. Not really. Not in any way that mattered. There had been nods at industry events, polite half-smiles across crowded rooms, the kind of acknowledgement that says I see you but also am not ready. And now, tonight, they were both here. Same venue, same backstage, same air. Someone had said Don was in the back room, alone, waiting to go on. Jackson didn't plan this, he didn't rehearse what he'd say. He just started walking. His footsteps echoed. Each one felt heavier than the last. He passed crew members hauling equipment, a woman on her phone, a kid with a laminate around his neck staring at him like he'd seen a ghost. Jackson didn't look at any of them. He kept his eyes forward. When he reached the door, he stopped. His hand hovered over the handle. He could still turn around. No one would know. No one would blame him. But something in him, something old and tired and honest, wouldn't let him walk away. He knocked. A pause. Then a voice low and careful. Yeah. Jackson pushed the door open. The room was small. A couch against one wall, a mirror framed by light bulbs, a table cluttered with water bottles and set lists. Don was sitting on the edge of the couch, forearms resting on his knees, looking at the floor. He didn't look up right away. When he did, his face didn't change. No surprise, no warmth. Just recognition, the kind that aches. For a moment, neither of them said anything. Jackson closed the door behind him. The noise from the hall disappeared. Now it was just the two of them, and the weight of everything they hadn't said. Jackson, Don said. His voice was flat, not angry, not friendly, just careful. Don, another silence. This one longer. Jackson could feel his heartbeat in his throat. He didn't know why he was here, or maybe he did, and that's what scared him. Didn't expect to see you, Don said, leaning back slightly, arms crossing. Defensive, not hostile, but not open either. Didn't expect to be here, Jackson replied. He stayed near the door, not moving closer. But I am. Don nodded slowly, eyes narrowing just a little. So what is this? Closure? An apology? Or you just lost? Jackson exhaled. I don't know. That seemed to catch Don off guard. His jaw tensed. He looked away toward the mirror, at his own reflection. That's honest, at least. It's all I've got right now. Don rubbed his face with both hands, then let them drop. It's been a long time, man. Yeah, long time to say nothing. Jackson didn't argue. He just nodded. Because it was true. The air in the room felt thick, like it was filled with all the words they'd never said, all the phone calls that never happened, all the moments when one of them almost reached out but didn't. Jackson could see the tension in Don's shoulders, the way his fingers drummed against his knee. This wasn't going to be easy. Nothing about this was easy. You want to sit? Don asked, gesturing vaguely at the other end of the couch. Jackson hesitated. Sitting felt like commitment, like he was staying for something bigger than a quick conversation. But standing felt wrong, too, like he was ready to bolt at any second. He sat. The couch was worn, the cushions sagging in the middle. They were close enough now that Jackson could see the lines around Don's eyes, the gray in his hair, the weariness that came from carrying something heavy for too long. I saw your set tonight, Don said, not looking at him. From the monitor in here, yeah? You sounded good, real good, thanks. Same songs. Different weight to them now. Jackson didn't know what to say to that. It was true. The songs felt different now. Heavier, more honest, like they'd lived through something and come out the other side scarred. "I've been thinking about this for a while," Jackson said quietly. "Seeing you, talking to you. I just never knew how." Don's jaw worked. "So what changed?" "I'm tired," Jackson said. "I'm tired of carrying this around. I'm tired of pretending it doesn't matter. I'm tired of walking into rooms and wondering if you're there and what I'll do if you are." Don finally looked at him, really looked at him. "You think I'm not tired? I know you are. Then why did it take 40 years? The question hung between them like a challenge. Jackson didn't have a good answer. He had reasons, excuses, pride, fear, shame, but none of them felt good enough. "Because I was afraid," Jackson said. "I was afraid you'd tell me to go to hell. I was afraid you'd forgive me, and I wouldn't know what to do with that either. I was afraid that if we talked, really talked, I'd have to face what I did, what I didn't do." Don was quiet for a long moment. Then he leaned forward, elbows on his knees, hands clasped. "You know what the worst part was? Tell me. It wasn't the fight. It wasn't even what happened with her. It was the silence after. It was watching you at industry things, at benefits, at award shows, and knowing we used to be brothers, knowing we used to call each other at 3 in the morning when we couldn't sleep, and now we were just strangers." Jackson felt something break open in his chest. "I know. Do you?" Don's voice rose slightly. Not shouting, but raw. "Do you know what it's like to lose someone who's still alive? To see them living their life, making music, being fine, while you're stuck in this thing you can't get out of?" "Yes," Jackson said. "I do. Because I lost you too." Don's eyes flashed. "You walked away. We both did." "No." Don shook his head. "No, don't do that. Don't make this equal. You know what you did. You know how it went down." Jackson felt his own defenses rising, the instinct to protect himself, to explain, to justify. But he forced it down, because Don was right. This wasn't equal, and pretending it was would only make things worse. "You're right," Jackson said. "I'm not trying to make it equal. I'm just saying I felt the loss too. That doesn't make what I did okay. It doesn't erase it. But it's true." Don stared at him. Then something in his face shifted, not softening exactly, but opening, just a crack. "What did you feel?" Don asked. "When it all fell apart, what did you actually feel?" Jackson took a breath. This was it, the moment he'd been avoiding for decades, the truth he'd buried under excuses and rationalizations in the business of living. "I felt like I failed you," Jackson said. "I felt like I was supposed to be your friend, your brother, and I couldn't figure out how to do that and be honest about what I was feeling. So I chose myself. I chose what felt safer, and I lost you because of it." "What were you feeling?" Don pressed. "About her, confused, guilty, like I was betraying you just by having feelings I didn't ask for, like I was caught between being honest and being loyal, and I didn't know how to be both. So you just disappeared." "I pulled back," Jackson said. "I thought if I gave you space, if I stepped away, it would hurt less. For both of us. It didn't. I know that now." Don leaned back, his head against the wall, eyes closed. "You know what I needed? I needed you to just talk to me. To tell me what was going on. To let me be angry or hurt or whatever, but to still be there. Instead, you just vanished. I didn't know how to face you. So you didn't try." "No," Jackson said, "I didn't try. And that was wrong." The admission sat between them. Simple, undeniable. Jackson felt exposed, like he'd peeled back his skin and shown Don everything underneath. But there was also relief, the kind that comes from finally telling the truth. Don opened his eyes. He looked older in this light, tired, but also somehow lighter, like saying these things out loud had released something. "I blamed you for a long time," Don said. "For everything, for her leaving, for the friendship ending, for how lonely I felt. It was easier to blame you than to look at my part in it." Jackson glanced at him. What was your part? I was stubborn. I was proud. I wanted you to come crawling back, to beg for forgiveness, to prove that I mattered more than whatever you were feeling. And when you didn't, I decided you were the villain. It made the story simpler. I don't think you were wrong to be hurt. Maybe not. But I was wrong to hold on to it like a weapon. I was wrong to let it define everything. I was wrong to tell myself I didn't miss you when I did. Every damn day. Jackson felt his throat tighten. I missed you too. Then why didn't we fix this sooner? Don's voice broke slightly. Why did we waste so much time? Because we're human, Jackson said. Because we're flawed and scared and we don't always do the right thing even when we know what it is. Don laughed. It was bitter but real. That's the truth, isn't it? Yeah. They sat there, two men in their 70s, carrying the weight of 4 decades of silence. The room felt smaller now, more intimate, like the walls had moved in around them, creating a space where only the truth could live. I don't know if we can get back what we had, Don said quietly. I don't know if that's even possible. Maybe it's not, Jackson said. Maybe we can't go back, but maybe we can build something new, something that's honest about what happened, something that doesn't pretend the past didn't exist. Don turned to look at him. His eyes were wet. You really mean that? I do. Because if you're just here to make yourself feel better, if this is about easing your guilt and then walking away again, I need you to tell me now. I can't do this twice. Jackson met his gaze. I'm not walking away. Not unless you tell me to. Don held his stare for a long moment. Then he nodded, slow, deliberate. Okay, he said. Okay. There was a knock on the door, a voice from the other side. Don, 5 minutes. Don glanced at the door, then back at Jackson. He stood up, grabbing his jacket from the back of the couch. Jackson stood too, unsure of what came next. You want to stick around? Don asked. For the show? If you want me to, I do. Something in Jackson's chest loosened, not everything, but enough. Don walked to the door, then stopped. He turned back, and for the first time since Jackson had walked in, there was something like warmth in his eyes. Thank you, Don said. For coming, for saying what you said, for not giving up on this. I should have done it years ago, but you did it now. That matters. Jackson nodded. He didn't trust himself to speak. Don opened the door. The noise from the hallway rushed in, voices, laughter, the hum of anticipation. He paused in the doorway. Jackson? Yeah? We're going to figure this out. It won't be perfect, it won't be easy, but we'll figure it out. I'd like that. Don smiled, small but real. Then he walked out into the bright chaos of the backstage world, leaving Jackson alone in the small room. Jackson stood there for a moment, letting everything settle. He felt raw, exhausted, but also something else, something he hadn't felt in a long time. Hope. He walked out of the room and found a spot in the wings where he could see the stage. The lights were dimming, the crowd was roaring, and then Don walked out, guitar slung over his shoulder, face calm and focused. The spotlight hit him. He adjusted his mic, looked out at the sea of faces, and then his eyes found Jackson in the wings. Just for a second. Just long enough for a small nod. Jackson nodded back. Then Don started playing. The first notes rang out clear and strong, and the crowd erupted. Jackson stood in the shadows, listening, feeling the music wash over him. It was a song he knew, one he'd heard 1,000 times, but tonight it sounded different. Tonight it sounded like a beginning. He thought about all the years, all the silence, all the pain they'd both carried, and he thought about the conversation they'd just had, the honesty, the vulnerability, the tentative bridge they'd started to build. It wasn't perfect. It wasn't a Hollywood ending. They hadn't hugged and cried and declared their undying friendship, but they'd done something harder. They'd told the truth, and sometimes that's the bravest thing you can do. 3 months later, Jackson was at home. It was late afternoon, the California sun slanting through the windows of his living room. He was sitting on his couch, guitar in his lap, working through a new melody that had been stuck in his head for days. His phone buzzed, a text from Don, working on something, want your ear on it? Jackson stared at the message. His first instinct was disbelief. His second was joy. He typed back quickly, send it. A minute later, a voice memo came through. Jackson pressed play. Don's voice filled the room singing over acoustic guitar. The melody was haunting, the lyrics raw. It was about loss and time and the things we don't say until it's almost too late. Jackson listened all the way through. Then he listened again. When it ended, he sat in the silence, feeling the weight of it. Not the crushing kind. The meaningful kind. The kind that reminds you that some things are worth fighting for. He picked up his phone and called Don. It rang twice. Hey, Don answered. That's beautiful, man. Yeah, really beautiful. There was a pause. Then Don's voice quieter now. I wrote it after that night. After we talked, I figured. It's not finished yet. I'm stuck on the bridge. Jackson smiled. Play it for me again. Let's work on it. Another pause, longer this time. Then, okay, hang on. Jackson heard the rustling of movement, the creak of a chair. Then Don started playing again, this time live over the phone. The sound quality was rough, but it didn't matter. Jackson closed his eyes and listened, really listened, the way he used to when they were young and the world was full of possibility. When Don got to the bridge, he stopped. That's where I'm stuck. Try going up instead of down, Jackson said. Make it lift. Show me. Jackson picked up his own guitar and played a few notes, singing softly. Like this. Don was quiet. Then, yeah, that works. They spent the next hour on the phone, trading ideas, building the song together. It wasn't perfect. They disagreed on a few things. They had to restart sections. But it felt right. It felt like coming home. When they finally hung up, Jackson sat with his guitar, playing the melody they'd created. Outside, the sun was setting, painting the sky in shades of orange and pink. The world was moving forward, as it always did. People were living and loving and making mistakes and trying to fix them. And somewhere in the middle of all that, two old friends who'd been silent for 40 years were learning how to make music together again. Not the way they used to, but in a new way. A way that carried the scars and the lessons and the hard-won wisdom of everything they'd been through. It wasn't a fairy tale. It wasn't a miracle. It was just two human beings choosing to be honest, choosing to be vulnerable, choosing to show up even when it was hard. And in the end, that was more powerful than any song they'd ever written. Because it was real. Jackson played until the light faded and the room grew dark. He didn't turn on the lamps. He just sat there, fingers moving over the strings, feeling the music in his bones. And for the first time in 40 years, he didn't feel alone.